The pain struck like lightning, splitting my chest wide open as if someone had taken a crowbar to my ribs. I gasped, eyes flying open to a harsh white light that made my skull throb. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The room spun in slow, nauseating circles, white walls, beeping machines, tubes running from my arms like plastic vines. When I tried to sit up, my body screamed in protest, and I froze. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. Through the thin hospital gown, I could feel thick bandages wrapped tightly around my chest. My heart hammered unevenly. My breath came ragged. That was when a woman in a white coat appeared beside my bed, her voice calm and steady. "Mr. Harper, you're awake." Her kind eyes shone behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I'm Dr. Amanda Carter, your cardiologist. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." I rasped. My throat burned as if I'd swallowed sandpaper. What happened to me?" She checked the monitor beside my bed, numbers flashing in green. "You underwent emergency cardiac surgery 2 days ago, triple bypass. Your heart stopped for 47 seconds during the procedure. 47 seconds. The words echoed in my skull like stones dropped down a well. Was I dead? "Technically, yes," she said gently, as if reading my thoughts. "But we brought you back." She pressed 2 fingers against my wrist, counting the faint thrum of my pulse. "The surgery was successful. You'll spend about 2 weeks here recovering, then slowly return to normal activities." 2 weeks. I looked around the sterile room. A small window revealed the gray Dallas skyline under heavy January clouds. No flowers, no cards, no sign that anyone in the world knew I was here. A nurse entered, warm smile, gentle hands. "I'm Nurse Emily Parker," she said. "I'll be taking care of you during this shift. Are you in pain?" I nodded. Emily adjusted something in my IV, and within minutes, the sharp edges of agony softened into a dull ache. "Dr. Carter pulled up a chair. "I need to check your cognitive function. Can you tell me what year it is, 2025, and the month, January?" She nodded with relief. "Good. Now squeeze my hands as tightly as you can." My grip felt weak, almost childlike, but she seemed satisfied. "Your memory and motor skills look good. The next few days will focus on managing pain and getting you moving again." When they left, I was alone with the machines humming beside me. I reached slowly toward the bedside table, fingers searching for my phone. The screen lit up with dozens of notifications, news alerts, pharmacy reminders, spam. But not what I needed. No calls from my wife, Linda, no messages from my son, Jason. I opened our family group chat. The last messages were weeks old, Linda complaining about the grocery store being out of her favorite yogurt, and Jason asking if I could spot him money for car repairs. Not a single message about my surgery, not one call to ask if I was okay. I set the phone down with trembling hands and stared at the ceiling tiles. 47 seconds without a heartbeat, and no one noticed I was gone. The antiseptic smell triggered memories I'd tried to bury. It started in the summer of 2020. I was planting tomatoes behind our home in Arlington when a tight band squeezed around my ribs. I gripped the fence until it passed. I told myself it was the Texas heat. "Bill, stop being dramatic," Linda called from the porch, sipping iced tea. "Come inside before you pass out." I forced a laugh. 66 years old and still strong. I'd told myself, but the episodes kept coming. By 2021, climbing the stairs felt like scaling a mountain. Jason, 28 years old and still living in our basement, barely looked up from his video games when I mentioned constant fatigue. "Maybe see a doctor." "Dad," he said without pausing his game. "Actually, wait. Doctors are expensive. Try vitamins. The real attack happened in March 2023. I was making coffee when pain crushed my chest. I slid to the kitchen floor, gasping. When Linda finally found me 10 minutes later, she sighed. "Oh, did you fall?" "I have a hair appointment soon. Can you drive yourself to the doctor?" I drove myself to the ER. "You've had a minor heart attack," said Dr. Daniel Brooks, a young physician with serious eyes. Tests confirmed what I'd been avoiding. My arteries were closing like rusted pipes. In November, Dr. Brooks warned me plainly, without surgery, "You have 6 months, maybe less. 6 months." I drove home shaking, wondering if my life had meant anything to the people I devoted it to. A soft knock on my door snapped me back to the hospital room. Emily peeked in. "How are you feeling, Mr. Harper?" "Thinking," I murmured. She smiled knowingly. Heart surgery gives people time to reevaluate things. But even she didn't know how deeply those reevaluations cut. 2 weeks passed in slow, painful increments. No calls, no visits. The morning of January 29th arrived crisp and bright. Freedom Day. I packed my few belongings into an old sports bag Linda had bought me years ago. Dr. Carter signed my discharge papers. "You're lucky to be alive. Mr. Harper, make the most of this second chance." I checked my phone one last time. Still nothing. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe the hospital hadn't reached them. Maybe 45 years of marriage and raising a child meant something. I typed a message. "The doctor says I can come home today." Jason replied within seconds. "Call a taxi. I'm watching TV." I stared at the screen in disbelief. Then Linda's message arrived. "Stay another month. It's so nice without you." My phone slipped from my hand. Those 2 sentences ended everything I'd believed about my family. Nurse Emily stepped quietly into the doorway just as my phone slipped from my hand. She paused when she saw my face pale, stunned, almost hollow. "Mr. Harper," she said gently, "are you having chest pain?" I shook my head. The pain wasn't physical this time. Emily picked up my phone from the blanket. Her eyes moved over the screen, reading the 2 messages that had just detonated my world. "Call a taxi. I'm watching TV. Stay another month. It's so nice without you." Her expression softened with an ache of sympathy. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Family can be complicated." Complicated. That was a generous word for people who celebrated my absence. I looked down at the discharge papers beside me. Instructions, prescriptions, follow-up dates pages meant to guide me into a healthier life. But in that moment, those papers looked like something entirely different. They looked like freedom. I walked out of Memorial Hospital on unsteady legs, my lungs filling with cold January air. Each breath reminded me I was alive despite my family's indifference. The taxi waiting at the curb was driven by a weathered Hispanic man with kind, tired eyes. He helped me into the back seat without a word. "Tough day." "Amigo," he asked as we pulled out of the parking lot. "Tough 45 years," I murmured before I could stop myself. He glanced at me in the mirror, not prying, just present. That alone felt like more compassion than I'd received from my own family in weeks. Dallas traffic rolled past in steady waves. Shining motorcycles sat outside a dealership as we merged onto the highway, chrome catching the afternoon sun. A memory surfaced my Harley from 1982. I'd saved for 2 years to buy it, the first thing I'd ever owned that made me feel truly free. But when Jason was born, Linda told me, "The bike has to go. We need the money." So I polished it one last time and traded freedom for a crib and responsibility. Life became a series of trades after that. Paris in 1995, a long-delayed honeymoon. I'd saved overtime hours for months, but Jason got into college, and Linda tore the brochures in half, crying. "We'll go someday." His education comes first. Someday never came. In 2010, Jason convinced me to co-sign a business loan for his graphic design startup. "Dad, this is our ticket," he said. Sketching big dreams on napkins. The business folded in 4 months. I worked 3 more years to pay off the debt. The taxi moved through familiar Arlington streets, the ones I'd driven for decades. Past the elementary school where I coached Jason's Little League. Past the park where Linda and I walked in the early years of our marriage. Past neighbors who believed we were a happy, tight-knit family. "You got people waiting for you at home?" the driver asked. I thought about the messages burning in my phone. "No," I said quietly. "I think I'm done being picked up." The taxi stopped in front of my house, white siding, green shutters. The lawn I'd mowed every Saturday for 20 years. It should have looked welcoming. Instead, it felt like a museum filled with the artifacts of a life lived for others. Inside, The house was a disaster. Mail piled on the entry table, Linda's shoes tossed beside Jason's muddy sneakers. The living room looked like a frat house energy drink can stacked on the coffee table. Pizza boxes on my recliner, Jason's gaming equipment sprawled across the floor. They hadn't just been fine without me, they'd been thriving. The kitchen told the same story: dirty dishes, takeout containers, expensive ice cream and wine in the fridge, items bought with money I'd earned while lying in a hospital bed. But when I opened the door to my study, the real wound landed. My sanctuary where I kept my books, my photographs, my journals had been turned into storage. Boxes of Linda's craft supplies buried my desk. Jason's old computer parts were piled on my shelves. Dust coated all the framed photos I'd arranged so carefully. 47 seconds of being dead, and they'd used my personal space as a closet. I sank into the one chair not covered in junk. The quiet hum of betrayal filled the room. Then I remembered the safe. The old metal box opened with a soft mechanical click. Inside lay my will, the document I'd crafted lovingly months before. To my beloved wife, Linda Harper. To my son, Jason Harper. Beloved wife, a son who wouldn't pause his TV show. A hollow laugh escaped my chest. The sound echoed in the ruined study. I opened my phone and typed Estate Attorneys Dallas. Names filled the screen. I clicked the top listing: Jonathan Hale and Associates. Estate planning and charitable giving. Perfect. Tomorrow, I would fix everything. The next day, I stood in a high-rise downtown, the elevator rising steadily to the 15th floor. My chest ached under the stiff-collared shirt I'd forced myself to wear. But the pain was different, sharper, clearer, purposeful. Jonathan Hale's office smelled of polished wood and quiet authority. Degrees lined the walls. He looked up from his desk with calm professionalism. "Mr. Harper," he said, offering his hand. "I understand you wish to make significant changes to your estate plan." I took a seat. "I want to leave everything to charity. Specifically, the American Heart Disease Foundation. And I want my family to receive nothing." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's a considerable change. May I ask why I told him everything? The surgery? The 47 seconds? The silence? The text messages? The state of my home? The years of sacrifice?" He listened without interruption. "Are you sure you're not acting out of anger?" he asked gently. "I'm acting out of clarity." An hour later, I signed the new documents. 3 signatures, 2 witnesses, 1 notary stamp. 45 years erased with black ink. "The foundation's office is on the 12th floor, Hale said, as he handed me certified copies. "Their media coordinator, Rebecca Mills, may want to discuss public announcement options." Public? Yes, let them feel what I'd felt. I thanked him and headed for the elevator. My heart beat steady and sure. Justice was beginning. The elevator doors slid open on the 12th floor, revealing a bright and welcoming reception area decorated with heart health posters and framed photographs of survivors and donors. It felt strangely appropriate to be here, a man whose heart had stopped for 47 seconds, now choosing how to spend whatever time remained. A woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile stepped out from a corner office. "Mr. Harper," she asked, extending her hand. "I'm Rebecca Mills, media coordinator. Jonathan told me you might be coming." Her office walls were lined with awards and newspaper articles, tributes to her work telling stories that saved lives. She gestured for me to sit. "I understand you want your donation to be public," she said, opening her notebook. "Could you tell me what led to your decision?" I explained everything. Not dramatically, not angrily, just truthfully. The abandonment, the messages, the silence, the years of quiet sacrifice. Rebecca didn't interrupt. She took notes steadily, her expression shifting from professional focus to genuine sorrow. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. "This, Mr. Harper, this story has the power to help so many families. People forget how essential emotional support is during medical crises. Your voice could change that. If my pain can help someone else," I said, "then it was worth something." Rebecca picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Channel 8. It's Rebecca Mills at the Heart Foundation. I have a story you'll want to see." A pause. "Yes. Today. This afternoon. When she hung up, her eyes shone with urgency. "A news crew will meet us at your house around 3 o'clock. They want an interview, footage, everything." I didn't hesitate. "Let's do it." The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Rebecca coached me on speaking clearly, answering sensitively, and staying authentic. She didn't script me, she wanted my real voice, the voice of a man who'd nearly died alone. Before noon, I found myself in a brightly lit studio at Channel 8. The anchor, David Marshall, greeted me with a firm handshake and a sympathetic nod. "Mr. Harper, your story has really moved our team," he said. "When you're ready, we'll begin." The interview started with simple questions: how the surgery went, how I felt when I woke up alone. But then came the one that hit hardest. "What was going through your mind?" David asked. "When you read those text messages from your wife and son." I took a breath. "It's simple," I said. "Love should be mutual. Gratitude is a choice. For 45 years, I chose to put my family first when I needed them most. They chose comfort." The studio fell silent. "And why donate everything to heart disease research?" he continued. "Because they saved my life," I replied. "My family didn't seem to care whether I lived or died, but these doctors, these nurses, they fought for me. They gave me a second chance." After the studio interview, a camera crew followed us back to Arlington. Neighbors peeked from windows as the Channel 8 van parked in my driveway. Rebecca whispered coaching reminders as microphones were clipped to my shirt. Inside, the reporter walked through the house, filming the mess left by Jason and Linda: the empty pizza boxes, the stacked gaming equipment, the dust-covered study buried under clutter. None of it needed exaggeration. The truth was powerful enough. We sat in the living room for the second half of the interview. "This is where you recovered after your surgery?" David asked. "This," I said, "is where I discovered how easily I could be replaced." He glanced at the family photos on the mantel: weddings, anniversaries, childhood portraits. "Do you have regrets?" "Only one," I said, "that it took me 68 years to learn my own worth." By late afternoon, the crew packed up. David shook my hand. "This will air at 6. Mr. Harper, your story is going to make waves." I spent the evening at a quiet restaurant downtown, eating slowly, savoring the peace. My phone buzzed occasionally, messages from Rebecca and the Foundation's social media team preparing for the broadcast. At exactly 6 o'clock, the restaurant TV switched to the evening news. "A Dallas man is making headlines tonight," the anchor announced, after donating his home to charity. "But it's why he did it that has viewers talking." My face appeared on screen, calm and steady. The interview aired seamlessly: my story, my decision, my truth. Across Dallas, living rooms flickered with the image of my house, the house Linda and Jason had treated like their personal playground. The broadcast replayed Jason's dismissive message, Linda's cruel text, and the stark contrast between their comfort and my medical crisis. Some diners in the restaurant glanced between the TV and me. A few nodded in sympathy. Others whispered to each other, shocked. My phone remained silent, but I already knew Jason and Linda watched the local news religiously. They would see everything. By the time I returned home, night had settled over Arlington. The house was quiet, peaceful. I made tea, put my phone face down, and settled into my recliner, the one Jason had used as a drink holder while I fought for my life. I turned off the television, and then I slept better than I had in years. Across town, however, my family's world was collapsing. In the Harper living room, leftover pizza boxes and soda cans littered the coffee table. Jason mashed buttons on his game controller while Linda flipped through one of her magazines. The news played in the background. They weren't listening, not yet. Then the anchor's tone shifted. "A Dallas area man is donating his house to charity." Jason froze. Linda's magazine dropped to the floor. The screen showed my house. Their eyes widened. That's our home." Jason stammered. Linda leaned forward, horror spreading across her face. "Jason, that's your father." They watched, stunned, as the entire story unfolded: the surgery, their absence, their messages, my donation, my interview, the footage of their mess, the truth. "Call him," Linda demanded, shaking. "Call him right now," Jason tried first, then Linda. Call after call, voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. 30 calls, 40, 67. I didn't respond to any of them. Their panic grew with every unanswered ring. Social media erupted. Neighbors posted comments. Friends shared the video. Their reputations began to crumble before their eyes. And for the first time in their lives, they understood something I was no longer theirs to control. They stayed awake the entire night. After the 6th dozen unanswered calls, after the comments online grew harsher and more public, after neighbors began messaging Linda asking if the story was true, fear settled into their bones. Jason paced the living room, running his hands through his hair so many times it stuck up at odd angles. Linda sat stiffly on the couch, clutching her phone like a life raft. "What do we do?" Jason muttered for the 100th time. "Mom, seriously, what do we do now?" Linda didn't answer. She just stared at her phone, waiting for it to light up. "Dad's lost it." Jason finally said, "The surgery must have messed with his mind." When people get older, Linda snapped out of her trance. "Don't talk like that. Your father isn't crazy. He's angry. And for the first time, he's showing it." Jason swallowed hard. They both froze when headlights swept across the living room wall. "He's home," Linda hissed, leaping to her feet. They scrambled to the front door like two people who suddenly knew everything depended on the next 5 minutes. At 8:30 a.m., I stepped into my own house calm, steady, even rested. Jason stood blocking my path, breath shaky. "Dad, what is this? What are you doing? We're your family." Linda hovered behind him, eyes wide and red-rimmed. "Bill, honey, let's talk about this. It's all just a misunderstanding." I hung my coat on the hook and looked at them as if seeing two strangers. "A misunderstanding?" I asked quietly. "When I lay in a hospital bed fighting for my life, did either of you call even once?" Linda opened her mouth. We were busy. "Bill, you know how hard it is to manage everything without you here." "So hard." I said, "that you told me to stay in the hospital another month because it was so nice without me." She flinched as if slapped. Jason stepped forward. "Dad, come on. That was a joke, a stupid one. You know we didn't mean it." I walked past him into the kitchen. They followed like shadows. The coffee machine clicked on. The slow drip filled the silence between us. 67 calls last night, I said without looking at them. "Funny how you suddenly had time when your inheritance appeared on the evening news." Jason's throat bobbed. "Dad, don't do this, please. We can fix everything. I'll get a job, I mean. I already applied to." I held up a hand. "I'm not interested in promises that will last a week. I'm done pretending to believe them." Linda reached out, placing a trembling hand on my arm. "Bill, I know we made mistakes, but we're your wife and son. That has to count for something." "It did," I said calmly. "It counted for 45 years. Until you showed me exactly what I meant to you." Jason's voice cracked. "Where are we supposed to go? That," I replied, "is no longer my responsibility." The coffee finished brewing. I poured myself a cup, savoring the warmth. "You have 24 hours to pack your things," I said, turning toward them. My voice was steady. "Starting now." Linda staggered backward, gripping the counter. "Bill, you can't do this," she whispered. "You need us." "No," I replied. What I needed was a family during the worst moment of my life. What I got was silence. Jason's face flushed with anger. "You're throwing your own son out on the street. This house is as much mine as yours." I met his eyes. "When was the last time you paid a mortgage, a utility bill, bought your own groceries, contributed anything besides dirty dishes and demands?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. I set my mug down. "I'm going for a walk. When I return, I expect to see packing boxes. 24 hours. Jason." I'm not repeating myself. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside. Behind me, I heard Linda's choked sob and Jason's angry breathing. But I didn't turn back. The cold morning air filled my lungs. The neighborhood was quiet, still waking up. For the first time in decades, I felt completely in control of my life. When I returned an hour later, cardboard boxes were piled near the door. They had taken me seriously, inside. Linda scrambled between rooms, wrapping dishes in newspaper with shaky hands. Jason hauled his gaming equipment to his car, sweat building on his brow despite the cold. I settled into the rocking chair on the porch with my coffee, watching them through the window. The sky was a bright winter blue, the sun warm on my face. "Dad, this is your last chance," Jason said breathlessly as he carried out a monitor. "We can fix this. We'll be better." "You had 45 years," I replied. Linda appeared behind him, mascara streaked. "Bill, please, I didn't mean what I wrote. I wasn't thinking. That," I said, "has always been the problem." Neighbors slowed their morning walks, curious about the chaos. Mrs. G. Henderson from next door approached. "Everything all right?" "Bill," she asked gently, "just making some family adjustments?" I said with a polite smile. She nodded, but her eyes showed she already knew. The news had aired everywhere by noon. Linda and Jason shifted into desperation. Jason tried bargaining. "We'll pay rent. We'll help with bills. Anything." Linda attempted guilt. "Bill, you can't live alone. Think of your health." I lifted my mug in a small salute. I'm thinking of it more clearly than ever. By 4 o'clock, both their cars were packed to the brim, clothes stuffed into garbage bags, electronics shoved haphazardly into back seats, items left behind simply because they wouldn't fit. "We'll be back," Jason said angrily as he slammed his trunk. "You can't keep us out forever." "You're welcome to visit," I said. "After you call first and ask permission." Linda gripped her car door. "I never thought it would end like this." "Neither did I said quietly. But eventually, the truth always arrives. At 6 o'clock sharp, 24 hours after my ultimatum, both cars pulled away. I sat on the porch long after their taillights disappeared, listening to the peaceful quiet of a house finally free of entitlement. Inside, the emptiness felt enormous, but not lonely. For the first time in nearly half a century, the silence felt like mine. Inside the quiet house, every room felt larger without their noise echoing through the walls. I walked slowly, letting the silence settle into my bones. It wasn't just the absence of people, it was the absence of weight. No more demands, no more emotional exhaustion, no more pretending. In my study, finally cleared of the clutter Linda and Jason had dumped everywhere, I opened the drawer where I'd hidden travel brochures for nearly 20 years. Colorado, Utah, Arizona, places I'd always planned to visit someday. Someday had always meant after everyone else's needs are met. Now, for the first time, someday belonged to me. February passed quietly. I built routines, simple ones that soothed me: morning coffee on the porch, long walks through the neighborhood, volunteer check-ins with the Heart Disease Foundation. My body grew stronger, my heart steadied, my breath returned. By early March, I did something I'd never done before. I took a trip just for pleasure. Big Bend National Park stretched before me like another world. Desert sunsets painted the sky in impossible colors, deep purples, flaming oranges, soft rose pinks that lingered long after the sun slipped away. I sat by a campfire and listened to the crackle of wood, the distant cry of coyotes, alone, but more at peace than I had ever been in a house full of people. One evening, as I struggled to set up my new camping stove, a friendly voice called out from the next site. First time out here, I turned to see a man about my age, broad-shouldered, weathered, but with kind eyes. Tom Walker. "First time anywhere," I admitted. He laughed. "Hell, at our age, that's impressive. Most folks just stay home and complain about the weather." We shared coffee under a sky full of stars. I told him a little about my recovery, not the whole story, just enough to explain why every breath felt like a miracle to me. He told me about retiring from teaching in Oklahoma, buying a camper, and setting out to see the country. "Life's too short to wait for permission," Tom said, handing me a second cup of coffee. "When you get a second chance, you take it." His words settled into me like truth. April brought me to Colorado. I drove mountain roads with snow piled on the shoulders and sunlight sparkling across frozen lakes. Hiking at higher altitudes challenged my heart, but the crisp air filled me with energy I hadn't felt in years. At a small photography class for seniors, I met Sarah Bennett, a widow from Denver with a sharp sense of humor and an eye for detail. She showed me how to frame shots, adjust exposure, capture light. "You've got a good instinct," she said, reviewing one of my photos. "You just need to trust yourself." Trust myself, something I'd forgotten how to do. By May, I was deep into foundation work, Rebecca often called to give updates. Your story has inspired dozens of families. She said one afternoon, people are talking about support, forgiveness, self-worth, boundaries. You're helping people. Bill. It felt strange. For decades, I'd helped people who never appreciated it. Now, strangers were thanking me. Summer arrived, bringing long, warm days and new adventures. Arizona's desert bloomed in colors I never knew existed. Utah's red canyons glowed at sunrise, my camera barely capturing their magnificence. I camped with Tom in New Mexico, learning the quiet art of doing nothing, a skill I'd never possessed. You're glowing. Dr. Carter told me during a routine checkup in June, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. For the first time in my life, I had no reason to stop. Travel became my therapy. The road became my teacher. Every mile rewrote a part of my old identity. I wasn't the man who lived for others anymore. I was someone who lived. Then, one warm July afternoon, I returned to Arlington for a short break before another trip. I sat at my favorite coffee shop downtown, reviewing photos from Colorado, when a shadow crossed the table. Dad? I looked up. Jason. He stood there quietly, looking different, older in the face, calmer in the eyes. Gone was the scruffy, some aimless boy who lived in my basement. His clothes were neat, his hair trimmed, his posture less slouched. Is this seat taken? He asked softly. I nodded toward the empty chair. As he sat, I noticed he wasn't wearing expensive sneakers or carrying any flashy gadgets, just a plain phone and a cautious expression. You look good, he said. Healthy, strong, travel agrees with me, I replied. He swallowed. I got a job. Full-time. Advertising agency downtown, graphic design. He showed me pictures of his small apartment, clean, organized, modest. He'd done it himself. And your mother, I asked. She's working too. Sales clerk at Macy's. Lives in her own place. He paused. We don't talk much. I think we both realized we relied on you more than we realized. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence breathe between us. Dad. He continued, voice shaking slightly. I'm not asking you for anything. Not money, not the house, not even forgiveness. His eyes lifted to meet mine. I want a chance to show you I'm different now, that I get it. I studied him carefully. Gone was the entitlement. Gone was the assumption that I would save him. For the first time, he looked like a man. What are you asking for? I said. Maybe, he hesitated. Maybe we could have coffee together sometimes, once a month if you want to. I didn't answer right away. I showed him a few photos from my travels, and he listened with genuine interest, asking about the hikes, the photography, the people I'd met along the way. He wasn't performing. He was present. As we walked out to the parking lot, I told him, we can do this again sometime. His face lit with something fragile, something real. Hope. But Jason, I added gently, I'm not changing my will back. He nodded immediately. I know. That's not why I came. We stood beside his old sedan, clean, dented, dependable. I'm happy for you. Dad, he said. Really? I watched him drive away carefully, checking every mirror, signaling at every turn, small things that showed he'd learned to pay attention. I climbed into my car and breathed deeply. Tomorrow, I'd leave for Arkansas, next month Maine, then Utah with Tom and Sarah. My life was mine now, for the first time. The summer heat settled gently over Arlington as July drifted into August. My house quiet, orderly, peaceful, felt completely transformed. Or maybe I was the one transformed. The same walls, the same floors, the same furniture I'd lived with for years. Yet everything felt new because, for the first time, it all existed for me. Not for Linda, not for Jason, not for the weight of expectations. Just for me. That afternoon, after leaving the coffee shop where Jason and I had talked, I drove slowly through town with the windows down, letting the warm air move through the car. It felt like driving through a memory I had finally made peace with. Mrs. Henderson, gardening in her yard as always, waved as I passed. I rolled down the window. It's good to see you back. "Bill," she called, "and looking so well." "Feeling well," I replied, and I meant it. As I pulled into my driveway, the sky above me was streaked with the same fiery colors I'd photographed in Colorado. I parked, stepped out, and stared for a long moment. The sunset didn't belong to anyone else. It was mine. Inside the house, the stillness wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I set my camera bag on the table and glanced at the stack of travel brochures waiting on my desk pages dog-eared, scribbled with notes, places circled with excitement. For decades, they'd been symbols of the life I never allowed myself to live. Now they were plans, real plans. I made coffee, sat at the dining table, and opened my laptop to book my next flights. Arkansas in a week, Maine in September, Utah in October to meet Tom and Sarah. My calendar looked like the life of someone who'd finally said yes to himself. Later that night, I stepped onto the porch with my mug, the warm ceramic comforting in my hands. The neighborhood hummed softly with cicadas. Porch lights flickered on one by one. The world felt wide and open in a way it never had before. My phone buzzed. A message from Tom Sarah found a great campsite in Utah for October. Big sky views. You in? I typed back, "Absolutely. Send details." A few seconds later, Tom replied with a thumbs-up emoji, an unexpectedly modern touch for a 70-year-old man. I chuckled. The future felt light. I thought about Jason not with bitterness, not with anger, but with something surprisingly close to acceptance. He had started over. So had I. Our roads no longer depended on each other, yet they no longer collided in resentment either. If small, honest steps brought us closer eventually, I wouldn't fight it, but I also wouldn't sacrifice myself again. I had already paid that price. As for Linda, we never spoke again. Not out of hatred, but out of truth. Some distances, once created, reveal the reality that two people were never truly that close to begin with. And that's all right. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for others is let them live their own lives without intertwining them with yours. I stayed on the porch until the stars emerged, remembering something Dr. Carter had told me during one of my checkups. You didn't just survive. Mr. Harper, you restarted. Restarted. What a powerful word. 6 months earlier, I'd been lying in a hospital bed, chest cracked open, heart silent for 47 seconds, wondering if I mattered to anyone. Today, I mattered to myself, and that was enough, more than enough. Before heading inside, I took one last look at the sky, endless, open, mine, and felt gratitude wash over me. Gratitude not for what I'd endured, but for what I'd chosen afterward. The silent revenge wasn't the news broadcast. It wasn't the will. It wasn't the eviction. It was this living well, living freely, living without fear of disappointing people who were never looking out for me in the first place. I turned off the porch light and went inside to pack for Arkansas. Tomorrow I would drive north. New trails waited for my boots. New skies waited for my camera. New friends waited around future campfires. And for the first time in my 68 years, I didn't wonder if I deserved any of it. I simply lived. As I zipped up my travel bag, the quiet house seemed to breathe with me steady, calm, finally aligned with the man I had become. Some stories end with dramatic confrontations, some with apologies or reconciliations. Mine ended with something much quieter, much stronger, self-respect, and maybe, just maybe, the possibility that love, when it returned someday, would grow in better soil than obligation. When I finally turned off the lights and headed to bed, the last thought that settled in my mind was simple. My heart stopped for 47 seconds. Everything after that belonged to me. August melted into September, and the Texas heat softened just enough to make the mornings bearable again. I'd already packed for my trip to Arkansas, but I gave myself one more day at home to simply breathe, to sit with the life I'd rebuilt. The house, once suffocating with clutter, now welcomed me with spacious peace. I found myself speaking aloud sometimes, not out of loneliness, but out of joy in hearing my own voice after decades of silencing it for the sake of others. That morning, I drove to a nearby lake. A light mist sat on the water like a veil, and the world felt suspended in a hush. Ducks paddled quietly across the glassy surface, leaving ripples that disappeared almost as quickly as they formed. I set up my camera, remembering Sarah's reminders, don't rush. Let the moment tell you what it wants. So I waited, and the moment came. A heron lifted its wings, water dripping like diamonds from its feathers, and took flight across the lake. I pressed the shutter. When I looked at the result, my breath caught. It wasn't just a photograph, it was a reflection of calm I'd never had before. Back at home, I printed the photo and framed it. It felt symbolic proof that beauty finds you when you stop running from yourself. That evening, while reviewing the image, I felt a subtle vibration from my phone, a message from Rebecca Bill. The foundation is organizing a fundraiser in October. We'd love to feature your story again this time, focusing on your recovery and travels. Are you open to it? I stared at the message for a long moment. Months ago, my story had been a cautionary tale. Now, it could be something else, Hope. I typed back, yes, tell me when and where. Before bed. I stepped out to the porch again. The air was cooler now, tinged with the promise of fall. I looked across the street at the Hendersons' house. They had taken to waving at me every morning. Perhaps my story had stirred something in them too, a reminder to check on those they claimed to love. Not long after, Mrs. Henderson brought me an apple pie just because. I accepted it gratefully. Bill, she said softly, I know things were hard, but you look brighter now. Happier. I am, I replied, for the first time in a lifetime, that night. As I placed the pie in the kitchen, I paused. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if Linda was eating dinner alone somewhere, if she had a friend to share weekends with, if Jason ever visited her. But the thought drifted away as quickly as it came, not because I wished them harm, but because their paths no longer shaped mine. I could care without carrying. I could remember without returning. The next morning, I loaded my car for the Arkansas mountains, feeling excitement blossom in my chest, a sensation so unfamiliar, it almost startled me. I touched the steering wheel and whispered, let's see what's next. And then I drove toward the sunrise. Arkansas greeted me with rolling hills, winding rivers, and forests painted in early hints of gold. The Ozarks weren't the tallest mountains I'd seen, but they held a gentle wisdom that seeped into me with every step I took. On my second day, I hiked a trail that led to a bluff overlooking a vast valley. The wind carried the scent of pine and earth. Birds called from somewhere unseen. I felt small, but peacefully so. I set up my camera again. But this time, I didn't take a picture. I just stood there. For years, life had been a series of obligations stacked one upon another. Now, it was a series of choices, and this moment standing on a cliff with nothing to prove felt like the purest choice of all. Later that week, I met a group of senior hikers at a visitor center. They invited me to join them for an afternoon walk. Among them was a retired nurse, a former mechanic, a poet, and a man who had once been an airline pilot. They talked about grandchildren, gardens, books, and heartbreaks they had long since healed from. One of them asked, Bill, what got you into traveling? Hesitated only a second before answering honestly. I survived something I didn't think I'd survive, and when I came back, I realized I'd never really lived for myself. So I'm making up for lost time. There were nods all around, no pity, only understanding. We hiked until sunset, and as the sky turned orange and lavender, the poet in the group whispered, sometimes the world gives us a second sunrise. I felt that in my bones. At night, in my cabin, I journaled for the first time in decades. The words poured out. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm finally my own person. Each sentence felt like a weight lifted. When the week ended, I returned home with a heart steady and full. There was no dread waiting for me, only anticipation for the next journey. A letter was stuck in my mailbox, from Jason. I carried it inside, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at it for a long moment before opening it. His handwriting was unfamiliar, neater, more deliberate. Dad, I wanted to tell you in writing what I didn't know how to say out loud. I'm working hard. I'm paying my own bills. I'm trying to be a man I wouldn't be ashamed to introduce to you. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday I can earn your respect. Thank you for meeting me for coffee. It meant more than you know. Jason. I folded the letter gently. Not forgiveness, not a reunion, but a beginning. That was enough. That evening, I finalized my plans for Maine. I printed a few of my favorite photos for the foundation to use at their fundraiser. As I framed them, I realized that each photo captured not just scenery but a version of myself I'd never known. A man who lived, a man who learned, a man who rose quietly from ashes without needing applause. When I finally stepped outside for one last breath of evening air, the world felt wide open once again. The breeze was cool, the sky dusted with stars, and I felt the deep, steady rhythm of my heart stronger, calmer, mine. My story didn't end when I walked out of the hospital. It didn't end when I signed the will. It didn't even end when I sent Jason and Linda away. It began the moment I chose myself. 47 seconds without a heartbeat had shown me what life truly meant. Everything after those 47 seconds was a rebirth, and I was finally living it.